Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the world of ancient Egypt. Picture this, you wake up as the sun rises over the Nile. The golden glow illuminating the intricate carvings and towering statues around you. The smell of incense fills the air, and servants rush around to attend to your every need. You've just been crowned pharaoh, and the world bows before you. The thing is, being the pharaoh isn't all grandeur and luxury. You may rule over an empire, but your life? Well, let's just say it's not the cushy existence you might imagine as pharaoh. You're not only expected to rule with absolute power, but you also bear the burden of being a living god. You are the earthly representative of gods like Ra and Osiris, their will made manifest through your decisions. Yet, despite being a god king, you're not exempt from the struggles of power. Your every move is scrutinized, your every decision weighed. You're not just a ruler, you're a symbol of divine will. To fail is to betray the gods themselves. Historians still argue whether the pharaohs truly felt like gods, or whether they simply had to live up to the overwhelming expectations placed on them. Were they gods in their own minds, or were they constantly haunted by the knowledge that they were just mortal beings playing a divine role? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm curious, where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it there? I'd love to see how far we're reaching across the globe. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Being pharaoh is a strange existence. You are treated as a god, but loneliness is your constant companion. Yes, there are grand feasts, gold-encrusted jewels, and exotic animals, but there are also enemies, assassination plots, and the constant fear of your own mortality. In a world where your legitimacy is constantly questioned, the fear of betrayal is as constant as the Nile itself. You cannot trust those around you, even your family, who are more than willing to see you fall if it means ascending the throne themselves. Imagine the weight of it. You wake up each day surrounded by servants, grand temples, and the echoes of your ancestors. You are the pharaoh chosen by the gods, but is it truly a blessing? The golden mask of divine authority rests on your shoulders. But beneath that mask lies a man, a ruler who must contend with the brutal expectations of both the gods and your people. As pharaoh, you're not just a king. You are the embodiment of divine power. Your every word and action reflects the will of the gods themselves. And failing to uphold that divine image is seen as an unforgivable betrayal. From birth, you are groomed for this role, but that grooming is more like training for survival than it is a journey to greatness. The gods may have chosen you, but you are never truly safe. The title of pharaoh brings power, yes, but it also brings constant scrutiny. The court whispers behind closed doors, rivals lurk in the shadows, and every move you make is watched by those who would love to see your reign end. No matter how strong you appear, the truth is simple. No one can afford to be weak. Historians still argue whether the pharaohs ever truly felt secure in their power, or if they lived in constant fear of being overthrown by the very people they ruled. Some suggest that the role of pharaoh created a sense of eternal pressure, where every action was dictated by the need to maintain divine approval. But perhaps you never truly get to know if you are genuinely chosen by the gods or just the right person at the right time. Pushed to the throne by a web of divine chance and political necessity, you live in a world where your power is absolute. Yet you are surrounded by the constant threat of instability. You are the living image of Ra on earth. But you are also just a man with enemies, a man with needs and desires that are often out of your control. As pharaoh, you cannot afford the luxury of privacy. The moment you are born into this role, your life is not your own. Every action you take is monitored and judged. Every decision is scrutinized by priests, nobles, and even your own family. Even the smallest mistake could be used against you by those who want to see you fall in your own palace. Surrounded by wealth and luxury, you are isolated by the very role you are forced to play. Your personal desires, needs, and comforts must be suppressed, and in their place is a constant performance. You are not just a ruler, you are a symbol of order and divinity, and to falter means the gods will turn their backs on you. This constant pressure weighs heavily on your mind, even as your exterior remains one of strength and authority. The burden of your position doesn't end with mere appearances, no. It's much heavier than that. As Pharaoh, your legitimacy is always in question, and it doesn't matter how many priests you have chanting your divine approval. No one trusts a ruler who ascended the throne too easily. Every action you take must solidify your place in history. You must prove, time and time again, that you are truly the chosen one of the gods, deserving of the divine power bestowed upon you from birth. It's clear that your destiny is not to live a life of peace or indulgence, but to ensure the survival of the kingdom, more importantly, to make sure your bloodline survives long after you're gone. Your throne isn't just a seat of power. It's a seat of constant war, not with armies, but with your own family. Your closest allies are just as likely to be your worst enemies. Your siblings, your uncles, your cousins, they all want the throne. The difference is, they may be more patient, more willing to wait for the gods to deliver the kingdom into their hands, while you are expected to prove yourself at all costs. Historians still debate whether the Pharaoh's family dynamics were a matter of rivalry and bloodlust, or whether they were simply a byproduct of the Pharaoh's need to maintain control at all costs. Some believe it was the constant pressure of ruling Egypt that led to these divisions, while others argue that it was the need for political survival that fueled these power struggles. One thing is clear: the Pharaoh was never just a ruler. He was a symbol of divine rule, but also a target for anyone within his own family who saw the throne as their rightful inheritance. Your personal relationships, well, those are just as fragile. Trust is a luxury you can't afford, especially not when it comes to the people closest to you. No one is ever truly loyal, and you're constantly surrounded by people who only want something from you. Whether it's land, power, or influence, your family will do anything to secure their own futures, even at the expense of yours. And the worst part is, you can't even trust the priest, the very men who swear allegiance to you, the ones who ensure your divine status among the people. You are their puppet as much as they are yours. They feed you with divine prophecies that are simply there to maintain the narrative that you are the right choice for Pharaoh. The trust you place in others is an illusion, and you're forced to live with that. Even the women you marry, often as political moves, carry their own agendas. In some cases, the Pharaoh had to marry his sister, practice that reinforced both the divine nature of his rule and the strength of his bloodline, but one that often led to twisted, unnatural relationships. Not that it matters. You're never allowed to have a normal life, one where you can find solace in the company of others or bask in the warmth of genuine affection. The question is not whether you want to be Pharaoh, but whether you deserve to be. In the land of Egypt, where gods walk among men, the weight of your crown never feels as heavy as it does when you realize just how much your divinity and rule hinge on the support of the gods, and even more so, the perception of the people. Every sunrise marks a new day where you must prove your worth to the masses. And while they may worship you as Ra on earth, they can turn on you as swiftly as a sandstorm if you falter. Public appearance is everything. Your image, your very essence most. Be that of a god in the eyes of your people. To show weakness is to invite rebellion. And rebellion, as history tells us, comes not just from outsiders, but from within your very court. Your loyal subjects are often the ones who plot your downfall. The same nobles who sing your praises at a feast will whisper of your flaws when the shadows fall, plotting and scheming to seize control. The royal palace is not just a symbol of wealth. It's a prison, a gilded cage where you are constantly observed, never allowed the luxury of being just a person. As Pharaoh, you are surrounded by servants who exist to maintain your illusion, to ensure that everything around you conforms to the image of godhood. But this too is a performance, and like all performances, it requires constant energy to keep up. You must constantly perform for the priests, for the public, and for the gods themselves. And though the priests present you as divine, you are, in fact, a mortal in a world of immortals, vulnerable, fallible, and trapped in the never-ending struggle to preserve the image of perfection. Historians still debate whether this constant performance was truly a mental strain on pharaohs, or if it was merely the cost of absolute power. Some suggest it was this insurmountable pressure that led many pharaohs to live short, troubled lives, while others argue that the ability to maintain such an image for decades was precisely what set the pharaoh apart from other rulers of the time. Either way, it's clear that being pharaoh meant sacrificing more than just your personal desires, meant sacrificing your humanity. But the real danger comes not from the public eye, but from those closest to you. As pharaoh, your own family can be your greatest threat. After all, a throne is a prized possession, and if someone in your family wants it, they will stop at nothing to claim it. Family members, your brothers, uncles, and even your own children may vie for your position, hoping to topple you when your back is turned. The ones who bow before you now could easily be the ones who plot your downfall in the silence of the night. Yet, this danger is not always external. Sometimes it comes from within your own mind, haunted by the constant fear that your rule will end abruptly by an assassination or overthrow. You are never truly safe, and your reign can be cut short at any moment. The palace that should be your place of refuge is a place of intrigue and danger, where you're never alone, even when you're physically alone. You live in a state of constant vigilance, where every conversation could be a plot and every smile could hide a dagger. The question always lingers: how much longer can you hold the throne? As pharaoh, the constant weight of uncertainty looms over you. You wear the crown, but at times you may feel more like a puppet in a game you didn't choose to play. The gods may have chosen you, but you have no say in how your rule plays out. The fate of an entire nation, an empire of unimaginable scale, hangs on every decision you make. One wrong move, one poorly timed decree, and your entire legacy can be reduced to dust. You've been prepared for this, of course. The priests, the scribes, and the royal tutors have instilled in you the knowledge of what it means to be a pharaoh. You've studied the ancient texts, learned the rituals, and memorized the names of the gods who guide your destiny. But all that knowledge, all that preparation, feels insufficient when faced with the daunting reality of ruling Egypt. The gods, after all, aren't always predictable. They may smile upon your actions today and turn their gaze away tomorrow. To be the pharaoh is to live with the knowledge that you're divine. Right can be revoked at any moment. This is the price you pay for being godlike in the eyes of your people. The Egyptians see you as Ra incarnate, the embodiment of divine power on earth. But the gods themselves are capricious, and you know that. A failed harvest, a political upheaval, or a foreign invader could change the course of your reign. Even something as trivial as a bad omen or a failed ritual could be interpreted as a sign that the gods are displeased, that they are withdrawing their favor. And when the gods withdraw their favor, there's little that can be done to regain. Yet historians continue to argue whether the pharaohs truly believed in their divinity, or whether they saw it as a necessary role in the survival of Egypt. Some believe that they were deeply invested in their godlike status, performing every ritual with the full knowledge of their sacred power. Others argued that it was a performance, a role that needed to be played for the stability of the realm, but one that didn't necessarily reflect the pharaoh's true beliefs. Either way, the act of living as a god is a performance in itself, one that requires constant vigilance and attention to detail. But as the pharaoh, you aren't just a ruler. You are the focal point of Egypt's cosmic order, the one who keeps the world from slipping into chaos. You are the one who ensures the Nile's floods, the harvest's bounty, and the stability of Egypt's borders. Every festival, every sacrifice, every ritual, no matter how mundane it seems, is part of maintaining the delicate balance of the universe. The gods demand it, your people expect it, and your survival depends on it. Every day is a new test. Every step is a challenge to prove your worth. And even in the quiet moments when you are surrounded by the comforts of royalty, you are never truly free. Your image is everything. Your priesthood is everything. And the will of the gods is absolute. So even in the depths of your palace, filled with its gilded beauty, there is no peace for you, no escape. There is only the constant awareness that your reign could end with a single stroke of fate. Betrayal, whether from your family or your own heart, is always lurking just around the corner. And though you are the most powerful person in Egypt, your life is not your own. You are Pharaoh. And that title, as grand as it is, comes with a price. The question, as always, is, how much longer can you bear it? Your life as Pharaoh is a paradox. On one hand, you wield absolute power over the lives of thousands, an empire built on your strength, intelligence, and divine will. On the other, you are a prisoner of your own position, bound by the heavy chains of expectation and constantly weighed down by the fear that someone will eventually take your throne. Your every decision, every move is scrutinized by your subjects, your court, and even the gods themselves. To falter is to risk everything: your power, your life, and the lives of your people. Imagine the daily ritual of maintaining the image of a divine ruler. You are treated as Ra incarnate, the most powerful being on earth, but every moment of your existence is shaped by the need to maintain this image. Your palace is a theater, your court a stage. You are surrounded by advisors, priests, and nobles whose loyalty is constantly in question, each vying for influence. But in the end, it's you, the God King, who must keep the throne steady, even though the ground beneath you is constantly shifting. Historians still debate whether the pharaohs truly believed in their divinity, or whether it was simply a necessary performance for the survival of Egypt. Some suggest that the pharaoh was fully aware of his human limitations, while others claim that they genuinely believed they were gods, ruling by divine right. Either way, it doesn't change the fact that the image of divinity must be upheld at all costs. You are forced to perform for your people, for your priests, and most importantly, for your family. But can you ever really trust anyone when your throne is so easily threatened? The pressure of living up to divine expectations isn't just psychological, it's physical. You feel it in your bones, the weight of the crown. The simple act of sitting on your throne, your royal seat of power, is a reminder that you are always under observation. You may try to retreat to your private quarters, but even there, you are never truly alone. Your every gesture is being recorded by your scribes, your actions weighed by those with their own agendas. Your image must remain perfect, and any imperfection could be seen as a sign that you are not fit to rule. It's a delicate balance, an almost impossible one that no pharaoh can ever truly master. But it isn't just courtly intrigue and divine duties that weigh on you. There's also the practical side of ruling. The Nile floods must be managed, the grain harvest must be abundant, and your armies must be ready to defend your borders. Trade routes must be secured, and alliances with foreign powers must be maintained. While others might view you as a living god, you are also a manager, a ruler in the most bureaucratic sense of the word. Every day, you must deal with logistics, trade, military strategy, and 1,000 other concerns that have nothing to do with your divine role but are essential to maintaining your empire. Historians argue whether the pharaohs were better rulers due to their divine status or whether their power came from their bureaucratic acumen. Some suggest that the pharaohs were simply excellent managers, using their religious authority as a way to maintain control over an otherwise fragmented nation. Others argue that the pharaoh's divinity played a huge part in keeping Egypt unified, as the people were more likely to remain loyal to a divine ruler than a mere human. In any case, the realpolitik of your reign is as important as the religious performance you enact every day. And at the end of the day, it all rests on your ability to appear perfect, even when the world is constantly testing your strength. But no matter how hard you try, you are not invincible. Even the gods are not immune to decay, and as Pharaoh, you are always at the mercy of fate. Every day, you must deal with the inevitability of death. You may live in a palace of luxury, surrounded by wealth, but mortality is still your greatest threat. Even as you govern over immortal gods, you remain mortal. No matter how much wealth or divine favor you have, death will always be the one thing that humbles you. You live in a gilded cage, surrounded by opulence and luxury, yet the walls of your palace are thick with the air of tension and danger. Every piece of jewel-encrusted furniture, every golden statue that adorns your halls serves as a reminder that your wealth and power are the products of bloodshed and fear. For all your grandeur, the truth is that the very power you wield comes with a price that no pharaoh can escape. Your life is constantly at risk. The enemies you face aren't just on the battlefield, they're within your own walls. Those closest to you, your own family, may be plotting to replace you. The fear of assassination is never far from your mind. Your brothers, uncles, even your own sons may smile at you in public, but in private, they're scheming to take your throne, believing they can rule in your place. As Pharaoh, you are never allowed the luxury of peace even among your own kin. Every whispered conversation, every quiet glance holds a potential threat. Even the royal court is full of danger, where alliances shift faster than the desert winds. Historians still argue whether this constant family betrayal was just the nature of power or whether it was a byproduct of the divine role the pharaoh played. Some claim that the sacred duty of pharaoh created an environment where everyone, even your family, saw your death as a divine necessity for the nation's survival. Others suggest that it was simply the nature of absolute power, where the one at the top had no choice but to be constantly vigilant. In either case, you are always surrounded by the fear that someone you trusted could be the one to betray you. But beyond the danger within your palace lies the wider world: foreign powers, rebellious provinces, and the constant threat of invasion. Egypt is a powerful empire, yes, but that doesn't mean it's untouchable. The Nubians to the south, the Asiatic tribes to the northeast each could see an opportunity in your weakness and strike at any time. You must keep your army strong, your alliances intact, and your borders secure. The Nile may flow through your land like a lifeblood, but you still rely on the protection of soldiers and fortified walls. The paradox of being Pharaoh is that, despite being a god, you are mortal, and the world around you is always a threat. As Pharaoh, you aren't just managing an empire, managing an entire nation's sense of security. You are the living embodiment of Egypt's power, and if you falter, if you show any sign of weakness, the consequences are catastrophic. The priests, who claim to represent the will of the gods, will turn on you. The nobles will use the slightest misstep as an opportunity to challenge your reign. Your enemies within and outside of Egypt are always looking for a crack in your armor, a sign that your divinity has faltered. And once they see that crack, it's only a matter of time before they strike. Historians debate whether this sense of constant pressure was what led many pharaohs to an early death. Some suggest that the stress of ruling, combined with the constant threat of betrayal, led to the short lifespans of many pharaohs. Others argue that the role of pharaoh, with its divine duties, was physically demanding, requiring not only mental fortitude, but also immense stamina. In any case, the life of a pharaoh was rarely long, and few were able to die in their beds of old age. The pressure to maintain control and appease the gods meant that your reign was always fragile. The gods may have chosen you, but that doesn't mean they'll protect you forever. Ra, Osiris, and the other gods may smile upon you today, but tomorrow they could easily turn their back on you, leaving you to battle for your survival. The divinity you hold is both a blessing and a curse, a constant reminder that, no matter how much power you wield, you are still mortal, and death is never far behind. The deeper you dig into the nature of being pharaoh, the more you realize it's not about ruling, it's about surviving. Surviving the court intrigues, surviving the endless demands of the gods, surviving the harshest scrutiny from your people, and surviving the pressure of your own family. Your life is defined by constant vigilance. You must keep up the divine performance, maintain control over Egypt's vast resources, and ensure that your name lives on through the ages. Every decision you make, every word you speak, is part of an ongoing act that never allows you to relax, to rest, or to simply be human. Your family is both your greatest asset and your most dangerous liability. You are expected to produce heirs, secure your dynasty, and ensure that your bloodline continues for generations. But in doing so, you open the door to the potential for rivalry, betrayal, and even murder. You are not only pharaoh, but also father, husband, and brother, and in each of these roles, you are surrounded by those who have their own ambitions, their own desire for power. The pharaoh is expected to maintain family unity, but unity is impossible when the throne is up for grabs. The men around you, the princes, your sons, your brothers, are not always the loyal subjects they pretend to be. They are just as desperate for the throne as you once were, and they will stop at nothing to take it. You've seen it in the way they whisper behind closed doors, the way their ambition leaks out in their smiles and gestures. It's constant, always under the surface, threatening to erupt. And the worst part, you can't trust anyone, not even your own blood. They may kneel before you, but that doesn't mean they won't try to slit your throat when your back is turned. Historians argue whether the pharaohs were truly isolated in their personal lives, constantly under threat from their own families, or whether it was simply the nature of royal politics to live in such a tense environment. Some suggest that pharaohs lived their entire reigns in a state of hyper-awareness, never fully trusting anyone, constantly afraid of the next betrayal. Others believe that the pharaohs had trusted allies within their families, but even these allies were ultimately seen as temporary. Just one wrong move, one slip, and a once loyal relative could turn on you in a heartbeat. Beyond the family drama, there's the reality that you have to maintain your divine status at all costs. You are the embodiment of Ra, the manifestation of Osiris, and the priest kings who serve you are expected to sustain this image. They make offerings, perform rituals, and pray for your continued reign, but behind the scenes, they are also competing for greater influence. Your priests are powerful figures, and they know that if you fall, they too will lose their influence. Religious leaders are often as dangerous as political ones. They want the throne just as much as anyone else, but they do it under the guise of divinity, making it that much harder to see their true intentions. The pressure doesn't just come from your family and court. It also comes from the gods themselves. As pharaoh, you are the link between Egypt's mortal realm and the divine. You are expected to perform sacred rituals, make offerings, and appease the gods to ensure that Egypt remains safe, prosperous, and unified. Yet, in doing so, you expose yourself to the whims of these capricious deities. If the Nile does not flood in time, or if a harvest fails, it will be seen as a sign of the god's displeasure and who is responsible for ensuring the god's favor. The gods themselves are capricious, unpredictable, and their wrath can be swift. If you fail to maintain their favor, catastrophe looms on the horizon. The gods are as much a threat to your reign as any human enemy, and appeasing them is an unending task. Historians still debate whether pharaohs genuinely believed in the divine power of the gods, or whether they used religion as a political tool to keep their subjects under control. Some argue that the pharaohs saw themselves as true divine beings, while others believe they merely played the role of divine rulers to keep Egypt's powerful priesthoods and nobility in check. Either way, the gods are always a force to reckon with, and your rule is never secure unless you have their constant support. The task of ruling Egypt is more than just governing, it's about managing perception. Everything you do, every word you say, is filtered through the lens of divine will. You are not just a man. You are the living embodiment of Egypt's eternal power. And in doing so, you become trapped in the performance, unable to live as a regular person to enjoy the simple comforts of life. There is no rest for the pharaoh, no time to let down your guard. You live in a constant state of performance, and your true self remains hidden, locked behind the mask of divinity. Yet, despite the constant tension and political maneuvering, there's another layer to the life of a pharaoh that is often overlooked: the physical toll. The title of pharaoh may bestow upon you the power to control an empire, but it also carries a heavy burden. Your body becomes the canvas upon which Egypt's divine story is written. Your image must be maintained not only through rituals, but through the grandest architectural feats, from towering pyramids to temples dedicated to gods who demand eternal honor. Every inch of your body and your reign must be immortalized in stone. Yet you are, at the end of the day, a man made of flesh in the pharaoh's world. Immortality is a goal, but it is not something easily achieved. Your tomb, your statues, your monuments, all are meant to carry your name far beyond your death, but the toll this takes on your body is profound. Mummification was not just a way to preserve the body. It was a ceremony of transcendence that involved painful rituals, often carried out with meticulous care. The process itself could leave you feeling like you were being dissected. Your body turned into a vessel meant to carry you into the afterlife. For all your power, you are still a prisoner of death, desperately trying to delay the inevitable. Historians still debate the true psychological impact of mummification on the pharaohs. Some suggest that the process made them feel more secure in their eternal legacy, knowing their name would be carried through the ages. Others argued that it was a constant reminder of their fragility, knowing that despite their divine status, death was inevitable. The physical toll of the royal rituals wasn't just confined to the preservation of the body after death, but to the grueling process of preparing for immortality during their reign. As pharaoh, your life is split between the responsibilities of the living and the preparations for the afterlife. You are expected to lead Egypt, but also to ensure that your passage to the afterlife is without obstacle. The rituals performed in your name are designed to ensure that your soul reaches the gods, so that you are ushered into eternity and can continue to reign from beyond the grave. But the more you prepare for the afterlife, the more you are reminded of life's impermanence. In the face of all this, a pharaoh is often forced to distance himself from the very humanity that makes him vulnerable. To remain on the throne, the pharaoh must be a symbol of divinity, of being who is above the mundane, detached from the worries of the common people. But this separation comes at a cost. The pharaoh is not allowed the luxury of enjoying personal freedoms or indulging in simple pleasures. You are above the people, but in doing so, you are also removed from them. This detachment allows you to rule with absolute authority, but it also leaves you isolated, surrounded by people who bow to you but do not know you. Historians argue whether this sense of isolation contributed to the mental strain of pharaohs. Some suggest that the absolute power they held led to a sense of detachment from their own lives, while others believe that this isolation was a necessary component of maintaining control. The pharaoh's divine nature demanded that they remain apart from the people, but in doing so, they also gave up the simple comforts of human connection. No friendships, no familial bonds, just the endless performance of godlins. In the end, the life of a pharaoh is not one of joy or relaxation. It is a constant battle, not just for survival on earth, but for immortality. Every day is spent balancing the divine and mortal worlds, performing rituals, commanding armies, and ensuring that Egypt's legacy continues. You live surrounded by luxury, but are always aware that your days are numbered, that you can never fully escape the knowledge that death will eventually come for you, no matter how many monuments you build in your name. You are Pharaoh, and while your reign may be long, the cost of that power is profound. You may think that with all this power, the pharaoh's life would be filled with comforts. After all, you live in the grandest palaces, surrounded by luxury, wealth, and servants. Yet, the luxury you enjoy is part of a performance, a facade, that hides the constant threat that comes with being pharaoh. You may be revered by your people, treated like a living god, but in reality, your life is marked by constant restraint, control, and surveillance. The palace, with its magnificent courtyards and golden statues, is not a place of rest or peace. It is a prison of expectations. Every wall, every decoration is designed to remind you of your sacred role and to keep you isolated from the world of your people. The grandeur of your surroundings is a reflection of your divine status, but it also serves to distance you from the lives of the common people who serve you. Your life is constantly under observation. Every step, every gesture is monitored, analyzed, and judged. Even the simplest action must be carried out with the knowledge that it will be noted in the official records. And any misstep could lead to disaster. Historians still debate whether this isolation, this detachment from the world outside, was a necessary part of the pharaoh's role, or whether it was a psychological strain that led to their early deaths. Some argue that the life of a pharaoh, though filled with riches and power, was ultimately a lonely one. The constant surveillance, the expectation of godlike perfection, and the pressure to maintain a divine image could have taken a toll on their mental health. Others suggest that this separation from ordinary life was simply part of the divine mandate, and that the pharaoh was never meant to engage with the common people in any meaningful way. Either way, the reality of being pharaoh is a life that exists in constant performance as the pharaoh. You are expected to be more than just a ruler. You are a symbol of Egypt's power and continuity. The gods who bestowed this divine right upon you expect nothing less than perfection. Your word is law, and your actions are the very embodiment of divine will. To fail is to invite the wrath of the gods themselves. Ra, Osiris, and Isis are not just names you invoke during rituals. They are real, present forces who demand your constant devotion and service. Your duty is to preserve Egypt's balance, ensuring that the forces of chaos are kept at bay and that order prevails. However, maintaining this divine balance comes with great cost. While the gods demand sacrifices, they also place you in a position of extreme vulnerability. You may wield the power of life and death over your subjects, but your life is constantly at risk. The priesthood, while loyal to you, is always plotting for more control over Egypt's sacred power. The nobles and royals close to you are ready to strike at any moment if they sense weakness. The price of being pharaoh is not just about maintaining divine favor, it's about keeping your enemies at bay, both within your family and outside of it. Even the seemingly sacred act of marriage comes with its dangers. Pharaohs were often forced, into marriages to maintain the strength of their bloodline, sometimes marrying close relatives to ensure the purity of their divine lineage. But these unions were rarely about love. They were political tools, weapons used to ensure that the Pharaoh's line remained intact. That power stayed in the family. But these marriages often led to political strife as family members fought for power, leading to betrayal, infighting, and even death. A pharaoh's queen was not always a companion or confidant. Sometimes she was a rival, a reminder that even the pharaoh's closest allies could turn against him. Historians argue whether the practice of royal inbreeding among the pharaohs led to genetic defects and weaknesses in future generations, or whether it was purely a matter of preserving power and maintaining divine legitimacy. Some believe it was an essential part of keeping the royal bloodline pure, while others suggest that it contributed to the mental instability and physical frailties of later pharaohs. Regardless, the pressure to ensure that Egypt's divine lineage remained intact was immense. For the pharaoh, maintaining the purity of their bloodline became as much of a struggle as maintaining control of their kingdom. As you sit upon your throne, surrounded by wealth and power, you are constantly reminded that you are not just a king, you are a living God. But gods do not enjoy freedom. They are bound by the expectations of their people, the rituals of the gods, and the constant pressure to remain perfect. Your reign may last for years, but it will always be filled with the knowledge that someone, whether it's a family member, a political rival, or even the gods themselves, will eventually take your place. Your power is fleeting, and no matter how grand your tomb or your monuments, death is always waiting for you at the end of the road. Living as Pharaoh means living in a world of contradictions. On one hand, you are the supreme ruler, the embodiment of divinity, with the power to command armies, control wealth, and dictate the future of an entire nation. On the other hand, your life is a constant performance, and your humanity is buried beneath layers of sacred rituals and political scheming. No matter how many festivals you hold in your honor, or how many statues are erected in your likeness, you are never allowed the luxury of truly being human. You are divine, yes, but you are also isolated, forced to wear a mask of godliness at all times. It's in the quiet moments, though, that the emptiness of this existence begins to hit you. You may stand tall in front of thousands of people, be worshipped as Ra on earth, and have everything you desire at your fingertips. But inside, you are profoundly alone. Family members, once thought of as your allies, are constantly looking for ways to claim your power. Political marriages are not about love, but securing alliances. And your closest confidants can easily turn on you when it benefits them. Your marriage to a queen or a royal princess is not a romantic one. It is a political calculation. You are bound to her not by affection, but by the need to preserve Egypt's divine bloodline. Even the priests, who serve you and maintain your divine image, are not always your friends. They may worship you in public, but their loyalty is often tied to their own power. They hold sway over the people and use their influence to keep your rule intact. But the question remains, do they worship you as a god, or do they worship you because you are a means to an end? They may serve your interests, but only until their own ambitions outweigh their loyalty. Historians continue to debate the true relationship between pharaohs and the priesthood. Some suggest that the priesthood held far more power than the pharaoh ever realized, secretly controlling much of the kingdom's religious and political affairs. Others argue that the pharaoh's control over religious rituals was absolute and that the priests were merely vassals, maintaining the sacred ceremonies for the pharaoh's benefit. Either way, it's clear that the pharaoh's power was always influenced by those around him, including those he was supposed to trust most as pharaoh. You are also caught in a tug-of-war between the demands of eternity and the reality of today. The gods may bless you with a long life, but you can never truly enjoy it. Every moment you spend ruling is another moment closer to your eventual death. And with death comes the inevitable construction of your final resting place, your tomb. This tomb, grand and filled with treasures, becomes your legacy, a lasting testament to your reign and your divine rule. But it's also a constant reminder that you, too, will eventually succumb to mortal weakness. You are immortal in the eyes of the gods, but you are still a man. And men eventually die. Building your tomb is one of the grandest tasks of your reign. It is the culmination of your power, a structure that will stand the test of time, housing your body for eternity. But the construction of this monument requires more than just wealth. It requires human labor. Thousands of workers are forced to toil in the heat, sacrificing their lives to build something that will endure long after they are gone. These workers, who are bound to the project for the sake of your immortality, will never live to see their own names etched into the annals of history. They work for you, for the future of Egypt, but they are also pawns in the same system that enslaves them. Your tomb is a monument to you, but it is built on the backs of the powerless. Historians often point to the labor force used to build the Pharaohs' tombs as a stark reminder of the inequality present in ancient Egypt. While pharaohs were seen as divine beings, their immortality came at a significant cost to the lives of those who served them. The immense wealth and power that pharaohs commanded were often built on the suffering and sacrifice of common people. These tombs, grand as they may be, are not just monuments to the glory of the pharaoh, but also symbols of the cruelty inherent in the system that allowed such power to exist, despite the sacrifices required to ensure your tomb's construction. It is your final testamentarial, immortal legacy. But there is no peace in your immortality. Every stone laid in your tomb is a reminder that, no matter how powerful you are, you will eventually fade away, leaving only the monument of your reign behind. You are Pharaoh, the living embodiment of the gods, but you are also a man trapped between the divine and the mortal, clutching at immortality while knowing it will never be truly yours. But despite the monumental effort it takes to secure your place in the afterlife, the pharaoh's life is never truly your own, even when it comes to death. As you near the end of your reign, the reality of your own mortality becomes more and more apparent. Death is never far from your mind. You may be a god on earth, but you are still vulnerable to sickness, to betrayal, and to the inevitable decline that comes with age. No matter how well you have performed your duties, no matter how many temples you have built or how many priests you have appeased, death remains the one constant you cannot avoid. As Pharaoh, you are expected to prepare for death from the moment you take the throne. Your tomb is constructed early in your reign, not just as a final resting place, but as a symbol of your power. It is designed to ensure that you will be well provided for in the afterlife, with offerings, servants, and treasures to accompany you into eternity. But even as you order the construction of your burial chamber, you cannot escape the creeping fear that your reign will end before the tomb is ready. You live in constant awareness that your body will one day decay, no matter how many golden trinkets you surround yourself with, or how many prayers are said on your behalf. The priests who serve you do their best to offer comfort, performing rituals to strengthen your soul for the journey into the afterlife. But the truth is, nothing can shield you from the reality that death is inevitable. Your immortality as Pharaoh is only symbolic. Your physical body will not escape decay. The gods may bless you with power and riches during your lifetime, but they are silent on the matter of what happens after death. And while you may be treated as an immortal during your reign, once you die, you are simply another mortal soul passing through the realm of the dead. Historians still debate how the pharaohs coped with this dual existence, the belief that they were gods on earth, and yet still bound by the laws of mortality. Some suggest that the pharaohs found comfort in their divine status, knowing that their names would live on through the grandeur of their tombs and their accomplishments. Others argue that the constant reminder of death was a source of anxiety and fear for pharaohs, knowing that no matter how powerful they were, they could never escape the ultimate fate that awaited them. One thing is certain, the life of a pharaoh was fragile and constantly haunted by the shadow of death. As you approach your final days, the pressure to ensure the continuity of your reign only grows. You must choose an heir, and the question of who will take your place is one that has been on your mind for years. But who can you trust? Family members fight for your approval, for the chance to inherit your throne. And even the closest of kin may be plotting against you. Your sons may seem like your natural heirs, but their ambition is as fierce as your own. And the same forces that once helped you gain the throne are now trying to do the same to them. In the end, your legacy is a complicated thing. You are remembered as a god, but you are also a man who lived with a constant threat of death and the knowledge that even the most powerful rulers cannot escape the fate that awaits them. The tombs you leave behind are monuments to your power, yes, but they also serve as reminders of your humanity and your inevitable decline. You are Pharaoh, a ruler of unimaginable power. But you are also a mortal being, subject to the same fate as everyone else. As the years pass and the end draws near, you become acutely aware of the transience of all things. The gilded palace, once a symbol of your unchallenged authority, now seems empty and cold. The servants who once tended to your every need, the nobles who once lavished you with gifts, now seem to fade into the background. You are Pharaoh, but in these final days, you are also just a man. And your reign, no matter how grand, will eventually come to an end. Historians continue to speculate whether the pharaohs embraced or feared their own mortality. Some believe that they truly saw themselves as immortal beings, confident in their place in the afterlife, while others argue that the pharaohs' reigns were haunted by the constant fear that their power would ultimately wither away. Either way, as pharaoh, you live with the knowledge that your life is finite, and no amount of gold or divine favor can change that. As pharaoh, your death is not just the end of your reign, but the beginning of a much larger ritual, a cosmic transition. The pharaoh's body, now stripped of its divine function, must be prepared to journey into the afterlife. This is no simple burial. It is a sacred passage, and every detail must be meticulously planned. You, as the pharaoh, must ensure that your soul's transition to the afterlife is flawless. For your eternity hinges on the perfection of this journey. Your tomb becomes your final fortress, not merely a resting place, but an eternal guarded sanctuary, a sacred vault where your body will remain preserved for eternity. The workers who construct it are not just laborers. They are the custodians of your soul, tasked with ensuring that your tomb is a fitting home for a god. As pharaoh, you will not simply be buried in the earth. You are placed in a monumental structure surrounded by treasures, mummified servants, and all the riches you may need in the afterlife. The more lavish your tomb, the greater the chances that your soul will be safe from the dangers of the underworld. Historians still argue whether the rituals of mummification and the construction of tombs were truly believed to be necessary for the pharaoh's soul to reach the afterlife, or whether they were an expression of power and wealth. Some argue that the pharaohs believed deeply in the afterlife and saw these rituals as the ultimate act of devotion to the gods. Others believe that these acts were simply an assertion of dominance, a way of demonstrating Egypt's strength and divine right to eternal rule. Either way, the pharaohs' tombs became monumental testaments to their reign, and the elaborate nature of these burial sites showed the profound importance of the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife. The construction of your tomb, while grand, is also a reminder of the fragility of your rule. For every stone laid, there is a reflection of the people you have ruled over and the many lives lost in the process. The workers who toil on your tomb often under grueling conditions, are not just fulfilling a divine command. They are also slaves to the idea of eternity that you, as Pharaoh, have created. Their lives, much like yours, are fleeting, and while you are laid to rest with unimaginable riches, they are buried under the weight of their labor. The more you ponder your own fate, the more you realize the irony of it all. You, the most powerful man on earth, a god king, are destined for the same fate as the common people. The mummification process in which your organs are removed, preserved, and stored in canopic jars serves as a symbol that no matter how powerful you were, you are ultimately still human. Your body is just as fragile as anyone else's, and though your soul may live on for eternity, the physical form that once ruled Egypt will eventually rot away, even after death. The Pharaoh's influence continues to shape Egypt, while the tomb serves as your eternal resting place. The afterlife is where you will continue to be worshipped. Your name is carved into stone, etched into the wall of temples, and written in the sacred texts that will endure long after your reign. But the price of this immortality is high. It costs the lives of thousands to secure your place in the afterlife, and that sacrifice, once given, can never be undone. Historians continue to wonder whether the pharaohs ever truly embraced the reality of their own deaths, or whether they saw the afterlife as simply a natural extension of their divine status. Some suggest that the rituals of death were simply ways to impress their people, reinforcing the idea that Egypt was an eternal empire ruled by divine power. Others believe that the pharaohs took comfort in the belief that they would live on forever, watching over Egypt from their tombs, guiding the people even in death. The truth remains that the life of a pharaoh is ultimately one of sacrifice, not only of your life, but also of your humanity. You are expected to live as a god and to perform duties that keep Egypt thriving, even if it means losing yourself in the process. Your soul's immortality becomes your burden to carry, and your reign is not measured by how long you live, but by how well you are remembered. In the end, the pharaoh is forever tied to Egypt's legacy. But that legacy comes at the cost of everything else: your happiness, your freedom, your very sense of self. As pharaoh, you live in the knowledge that your time will come, and that even the gods cannot protect you from death's cold embrace. Despite all the wealth, all the power, and all the divine favor that the gods have bestowed upon you, you will one day become dust. And so, with this knowledge weighing heavily on your mind, you must begin to prepare for the inevitable. In ancient Egypt, death was not the end, but rather a transition. And it is this transition that becomes your focus in your final years. Every pharaoh, at some point, must come to terms with the reality that their reign will be over. While your body may be preserved in elaborate mummification, it is not the preservation of your physical form that matters most. It is the preservation of your legacy. Your tomb, your monuments, and the treasures you accumulate during your reign are meant to ensure your immortality. You are not simply seeking a comfortable resting place. You are working to immortalize your name, to ensure that generations after you will remember your greatness. But here's the catch. The creation of a legacy is not just for your afterlife. It's a matter of political survival for your descendants. The tomb, the statues, the obelisks, they are not just for you. They are tools to keep your family in power. Egypt's stability relies on a constant line of succession. As pharaoh, you are constantly faced with the burden of choosing the right heir. And this is one of the most difficult decisions you will ever make. Who among your children will be able to protect your dynasty? Who can carry the burden of the god's favor? Who will survive the intrigue of the royal court? As you prepare for your eventual death, you must also navigate the complex tensions within your own family. Choosing an heir is more than just a matter of blood, it's a matter of strength. The successor must be both politically savvy and physically capable to defend Egypt's vast lands. Even a divinely chosen ruler like yourself knows that the Pharaohs' divine right is not enough to guarantee a smooth transition. Court factions will fight, and even the most trusted advisors will turn their loyalty to the highest bidder. You may choose a successor with the best of intentions, but the moment you die, chaos may follow. Historians debate whether the Pharaohs ever truly felt secure in their choices of heirs. Given the intense pressures they faced, some argue that Pharaohs never completely trusted their sons or daughters to continue their rule. Knowing the dangers of court politics and the inevitable power struggles that would follow their death. Others suggest that the Pharaohs may have relied on a divine understanding of their successors, trusting that the gods would provide a worthy ruler to continue their line. But regardless of what the Pharaoh believes, the transition of power is always complicated. Upon your death, your heir will not just inherit your wealth and palace. They will inherit the burden of being Pharaoh, the divine ruler of Egypt. This responsibility comes with its own set of challenges. The people will expect the new Pharaoh to continue the sacred rituals and ensure Egypt's prosperity, while also maintaining the divine image that you, the former Pharaoh, built throughout your reign. Your legacy is both a gift and a curse, one that your successor will either uphold with grace or squander, depending on their strength and wisdom. This power transition is not as simple as handing over the throne. It is a carefully orchestrated ritual that involves not just political maneuvering, but the God's will. The Pharaoh's death must be timed to allow for the most seamless succession. If an heir is chosen before the Pharaoh's death, it may seem like an admission of weakness, or an indication that the Pharaoh's reign is no longer legitimate. On the other hand, if the heir rises to power too quickly after the Pharaoh's death, it may seem like an opportunity for chaos. With factions fighting to claim control of Egypt, historians continue to speculate whether the Pharaohs ever truly believed their successors would be able to maintain Egypt's dominance, or whether they were doomed to live under the same pressures that they had faced. Some argue that the dynastic nature of Egyptian rule meant that the Pharaohs were burdened by their own legacy, forced to live up to the expectations set by their predecessors. Others claim that the Pharaohs were determined to carve their own legacy, believing that their divine power would ensure their family's reign for generations to come. But there's more to the Pharaoh's succession than just ensuring the continuation of power. The Pharaoh's death marks the end of a reign, yes, but it also signals the beginning of a new chapter for the nation. The rituals surrounding the Pharaoh's transition into the afterlife are as important as the political maneuvering, to ensure that the throne remains within the family. The funeral rites, the elaborate mummification, and the construction of a tomb are not just for the Pharaoh's benefit. They are a sacred duty, a task performed for the gods and for the continued prosperity of Egypt. The Pharaoh is not just entombed, they are enshrined, elevated into a state of divinity that will watch over Egypt for eternity. As Pharaoh, you were more than just a ruler, you were the mediator between the gods and the people. Your very existence ensured that order, and chaos were balanced, and that Egypt's land remained fertile and prosperous. The gods depended on you to maintain this balance, but your death presents a cosmic challenge. The rituals performed at your funeral and within your tomb are meant to guarantee that your power remains intact, that your spirit continues to protect Egypt, and that the flow of the Nile, the success of the harvests, and the stability of the realm are not disrupted by your absence. The mummification process is not simply an act of preservation. It is a ritual of continuity. Your organs are carefully removed and stored in canopic jars to ensure your physical integrity in the afterlife. Your body is treated with the utmost respect, wrapped in layers of linen and coated with resins and oils to keep it as immortal as possible. But as royal as it may seem, there's something haunting about the process. The constant reminder that no matter how much effort you put into preserving yourself, your soul will eventually be called to leave this world. The rituals surrounding your death are a way of delaying the inevitable, of trying to secure your place as one of the eternal gods. But they also bring you face to face with the fragility of life. Historians continue to debate the spiritual significance of mummification and burial practices in ancient Egypt. Some believe that the pharaohs genuinely believed in the divinity of their afterlife, seeing their mummification as a necessary step to becoming one with the gods. Others argue that these practices were less about personal spiritual beliefs and more about maintaining the political stability of Egypt. The tombs and monuments built by the pharaohs were as much a political statement as a spiritual journey, a way of ensuring that their reign would endure far beyond their death. However, regardless of the intent behind it, the legacy left behind by the pharaoh is often complicated. The grand tombs, the vast riches, and the monuments, while magnificent, are also a testament to the cost of maintaining divine rule. These monumental structures, built with the blood, sweat, and lives of thousands, are a reflection of both the pharaoh's immense power and a heavy price paid by those who labored to build them. The pharaoh may be entombed in luxury, but the workers who built the tombs are often forgotten, their names lost to history, their lives sacrificed in the name of immortality. As you lie in your tomb, surrounded by treasures and offerings, the question remains, what is the true cost of immortality, while your body is carefully preserved for eternity? The workers who ensured that this grandeur would exist are long gone, buried in unmarked graves. The legacy you leave behind is not just one of greatness, but also one of sacrifice that ensures Egypt's stability at the expense of the common people. The pharaoh's immortality is not a personal victory. It is a societal necessity. Historians argue whether the pharaohs fully understood the cost of this immortality. Some suggest that the grandeur of their tombs and the riches they left behind were seen as a form of divine security, ensuring that Egypt would remain in their care for eternity. Others suggest that the pharaohs saw the building of these tombs as a way of asserting their supremacy, a way of ensuring that future generations would look upon them as gods who shaped Egypt into its eternal glory regardless of the pharaohs' personal beliefs. One thing is certain: the burden of immortality was not theirs alone to bear. It was a collective effort built on the labor of countless people, and only in death does the pharaoh truly begin to understand the depth of this responsibility. Even as they lie in their tombs, their legacy lives on, not just in the monuments they leave behind, but in the very lives of their subjects, who continue to serve Egypt long after their god-king has passed. Even in death, you, as pharaoh, remain an uncontested figure in the landscape of Egypt. Your tomb, monumental and magnificent, is not just a resting place, but a symbol of continuity, a symbol that Egypt will endure. The countless treasures and offerings left behind for your journey to the afterlife ensure that you are provided for in eternity, and that your influence will continue to shape Egypt long after your reign has ended. But while your physical form may be preserved, the question that lingers over your tomb is this: will your power really endure? You see, as the pharaoh's reign comes to an end, so too does the certainty that Egypt will remain stable. Despite the grandeur of your tomb, the magnificent treasures, and the architectural feats, Egypt will continue to face external and internal challenges. The passing of a pharaoh often leaves behind a power vacuum, one that is filled by those who would be quick to challenge your successor's right to the throne. The political intrigue that defines your reign does not end with your death. It simply evolves into a new chapter of rivalries and betrayals. Historians continue to argue whether the pharaoh's reign truly ensured the continuity of Egypt, or whether Egypt's stability was more a result of the bureaucratic structures and systems put in place by the pharaoh's officials. While the pharaohs may have been the embodiment of divine order, it was the administrative elite, the scribes, the generals, and the priests who ensured that Egypt continued to thrive. The pharaoh was the figurehead, yes, but the real power was often in the hands of those who controlled the day-to-day affairs of Egypt. This is the ironical truth. While the pharaoh's death is seen as the end of one era, it is also the beginning of a new one. The legacy of the pharaoh may endure in monuments, temples, and tombs, but the kingdom itself is never guaranteed to maintain the same sense of stability. New pharaohs, children, or nephews may inherit the throne, but the power struggles within the royal court often shape the fate of Egypt. The death of the pharaoh does not just affect the royal family, it affects the entire nation. Your successor, though chosen by divine right, must face the challenges that you never had to. The factions of the royal court, the ambitious family members, and the priests all become players in the game of succession. Your son, who you hoped would rise too. Power and carry on your legacy may be seen as incompetent, weak, or worse, too young to hold the power you once commanded. The political and social factions that supported your reign may not support his. And in the blink of an eye, the dynasty you've worked so hard to establish may crumble. Historians often debate the succession crises that followed the deaths of prominent pharaohs. Some argue that the sudden death of a pharaoh created a power vacuum, leading to civil war and instability. Others believe that the careful grooming of an heir, combined with the support of loyal officials and priests, could maintain Egypt's order even after the pharaoh's death. The dynastic continuity that Egypt prided itself on was, in reality, fragile, vulnerable to the ambitions of those who sought power for themselves. Despite your monumental achievements, the question of legacy is always uncertain. Even the greatest pharaohs, those who built the grandest pyramids and temples, left behind kingdoms in flux after their death. The idea that power is eternal is comforting, but in reality, the pharaoh's power was always fragile. The gods may have chosen you, but their favor can easily turn to another. In death, the pharaoh may be enshrined as an eternal ruler, but Egypt itself is never truly free from the constant struggle for control. Your tomb stands as a testament to your reign, but it is also a reminder that even in death, you will never truly be free from the weight of your power. You may be enshrined in gold, your name chiseled into the stone of Egypt's history, but the empire you leave behind is constantly changing. The only certainty in your death is that Egypt, as the land of the gods, will continue to change, and its future will depend on those who succeed you. You are immortalized, but the real question is whether your empire will remain strong enough to endure the passing of time. As the pharaoh, you were the embodiment of divine order, but your legacy is far more complicated than statues and pyramids. Your reign was filled with opulence, yes, but also strife, betrayal, and an unending struggle to preserve your power. You spent your days surrounded by luxury, yet every decision carried the weight of your gods. And every mistake threatened not only your life, but the stability of Egypt itself. Your tomb may stand for centuries, but the tension of your rule will echo long after you've passed. Your death marks the end of an era, but it also signifies the beginning of a new political landscape. It is a landscape filled with uncertainty, as Egypt's future now hinges on a new pharaoh who must fill your sacred shoes while navigating the power struggles you left behind. The political alliances you forged may crumble. The priesthood you cultivated may grow restless, and your family members, once loyal, may see your death as their opportunity to seize power. In the eyes of your people, you were Ra incarnate, but in the eyes of your family and the court, you were just a ruler who could be replaced. For all your divine power, you are now just another mortal man whose fate is in the hands of the gods. Your death brings about a ritual that ensures the continuance of Egypt's divine order. But even in death, you are vulnerable. As pharaoh, you were always watched every move you made, every word you spoke, every action scrutinized. Now, in Your death, every inch of Egypt will be watched, as the court determines who will take your place. The throne is not yours alone, belongs to Egypt, and the gods themselves must decide who will fill the void left by your passing. The transition of power is never smooth. The death of the pharaoh sets off a ripple effect throughout the kingdom, a period of uncertainty that breeds rebellion and disorder. There are always those eager to capitalize on a power vacuum, noble families seeking to place their own sons on the throne. Military leaders eager for glory, and priests who manipulate the sacred rites to ensure that the new pharaoh aligns with their own ambitions. The pharaoh is a god on earth, but the game of politics is as earthly as it gets. And with your passing, the divine world shifts, leaving your successor with the impossible task of navigating the same dangers you faced. Historians debate how pharaohs truly viewed their own mortality. Some suggest that they lived in a constant state of denial, viewing their divine status as something that would transcend death. Others argue that they understood the fragility of their reigns, knowing that their gods could turn against them at any moment. The evidence of their tombs suggests that while pharaohs may have been prepared for the afterlife, they were also constantly aware of the precariousness of their power. The monuments they built were not just for their immortality, but to ensure the continuity of Egypt itself. The gods might grant you power, but they don't promise you forever as you lie in your tomb. Embalmed for eternity, you must face the fact that your legacy will be shaped by those who follow you. It's not just about what you did, but about how you are remembered. Dynastic succession was the cornerstone of Egyptian power, and your successors must uphold the divine role you created. But there is no guarantee that your bloodline will carry on your greatness. A failed heir, a weak ruler, or a political disaster could undo all that you achieved. Your tomb may be magnificent, your name forever carved in stone, but your dynasty is never truly safe. The burden of the pharaoh's immortality is a heavy one, and it rests on the shoulders of your heirs. You may have created Egypt's divine order, but they must maintain it. Your son, perhaps your most trusted successor, now takes on the mantle of godhood. But what if they are incompetent? What if they lack the strength to command Egypt's immense resources or protect it from foreign invaders? The questions of your succession are more than just political. They are questions of Egypt's future. What happens after your reign? What happens after your name fades from the walls of temples and your tomb becomes an ancient relic? Historians argue whether Egypt's stability rested on the godly power of the pharaohs or on the structures they put in place to ensure administrative continuity. The pyramid, the tomb, and the ritual of divine kingship were meant to give legitimacy to your reign. But it is the political machinery, the bureaucracy, the priests, and the military that ensured Egypt's survival beyond the death of any individual ruler. The gods may grant a pharaoh power, but it is the pharaoh's legacy that shapes the future of Egypt. As your tomb is sealed, the final offerings are made, you are reminded that the power you held for so long was never fully yours. Egypt's future and your place in it will be determined by those who come after you, and the way they navigate the treacherous waters of politics and religion. In the end, your reign will be remembered as a time of divine greatness, but your successor's ability to preserve that greatness will determine the lasting impact of your rule. The moment of your death marks not just the end of your reign, but the beginning of the mystery that surrounds your legacy. Pharaohs were not simply rulers, they were symbols of Egypt's eternal power, and their tombs became the centerpieces of their immortality. But immortality is not simply about the preservation of the body. It's about creating a lasting narrative, one that ties you to the gods, the land, and the people. And once you are gone, the story of your reign is no longer yours to tell. It's left to the priests, the scribes, and the bards to construct the image of you as a god, something that may not reflect the true weight of your life. You may be buried in a grand tomb, surrounded by treasures and offerings. But even the most spectacular tomb cannot guarantee the continuation of your divine rule. The truth is, the narrative of your reign is shaped not by what you actually did during your life, but by how those after you choose to remember you. Your name inscribed in stone, your likeness carved in gold. These are not just acts of worship, they are also acts of propaganda. Your legacy, your divinity, will be shaped by the priests and scribes who write about you long after your death. The story they tell will become Egypt's history. Will it be one of triumph, order, and divine favor, or one of weakness, fear, and political intrigue? Historians still debate whether pharaohs were aware of how their reigns would be remembered. Did they view their tombs and monuments as the ultimate expression of their divinity, or were they simply trying to impress future generations? Some suggest that pharaohs saw their monuments as a way of asserting their dominance over both the living and the dead, while others argue that they were truly motivated by the desire to maintain order and stability in Egypt long after they were gone. Either way, the pharaoh's legacy was always tied to how others saw him. But the danger of a pharaoh's legacy lies in the fact that it is never fully within your control. You can build the most magnificent tombs, construct the grandest statues, and commission the most elaborate monuments, but in the end, the narrative is shaped by those who come after you. And often, it is the scribes and priests, those who shape the public's perception of the pharaoh, who are most influenced by political and religious forces. How you are remembered may have little to do with your actual reign, and more to do with the political environment that follows your death. When you pass, your successor is expected to carry on your legacy to live up to your divine role. But your successor's ability to rule is not solely determined by their lineage or the divine right that you bestowed upon them. Their ability to claim the throne and maintain control will depend on the political alliances they can form, the support of the priests, and their ability to manage the royal court. Even though your son or daughter may inherit your divine title, they must also prove themselves worthy of the power that you once held. And in doing so, they may shape your legacy in ways you never intended. Egypt's history is full of pharaohs who rose to power only to be cast down, forgotten, or erased from history by the scribes and priests of the time. Some pharaohs, who may have ruled for decades, find that their legacy is all but wiped away after their death. Others, who were once seen as weak or ineffective, are remembered as great leaders, their names and monuments preserved for eternity. The legacy of a pharaoh is never truly guaranteed. And the pharaoh's death marks not just the end of a reign, but the beginning of an uncertain journey through history. But perhaps the most unsettling reality is that, for all your power, your divinity, and the monuments you leave behind, even the memory of Pharaoh is subject to change. The gods may have chosen you, and your reign may have been filled with glory, but your legacy will be shaped by the hands of those who interpret it. And with every passing generation, the true nature of your rule may be lost or reinterpreted based on the needs of those who came after you. Historians argue whether the pharaohs ever truly understood that their immortality was out of their control. Were they aware that their names could one day be forgotten, erased by time and the whims of the priests who served them? Or did they believe that their divine right would eternally keep their memory intact? In the end, the story of the pharaoh is a complicated one, and the most difficult truth is this: for all the monuments, all the treasures, and all the divine status, the pharaoh, no matter how powerful, will eventually fade, just like any other mortal ruler. The pharaoh's death might mark the end of their reign, but it doesn't end the story of Egypt. Egyptian civilization, unlike the individual pharaohs who ruled it, will endure for thousands of years. The monuments you leave behind, the pyramids, the temples, the tombs, are all designed to ensure that your reign remains immortal in the eyes of your people. But these monuments, as grand and awe-inspiring as they are also reminders of something far darker: that Egypt's power has always been fragile. Each pharaoh, no matter how mighty, was ultimately at the mercy of the winds of time. You built your monuments not just to celebrate your divine rule, but to prove that Egypt's glory would never die. But the people who come after you will continue to change how Egypt is perceived. The fact remains that even the pharaoh's legacy is subject to the inevitable decay of time. When the world around you changes, so too do the meanings of the monuments that once marked your reign. The pyramids may stand, but they are often perceived differently by those who walk by them centuries later. Your descendants, who inherit your wealth and power, may one day look upon your tomb and see not just the glorious marker of a god-king's reign, but a symbol of ancient oppression built by the labor of those who had no voice in their creation. The grandness of the tombs and the statues may one day appear less as the products of divine glory, and more as the reminders of Egypt's imbalanced power. Historians have long debated whether the legacy of the pharaohs is a source of pride or a burden to Egypt. Some argue that the monumental structures created in the pharaohs' names were a testament to Egypt's eternal power, while others suggest that these structures served as constant reminders of the toll exacted on the people and the land. Even now, centuries after the last pharaoh has passed, Egypt's ancient monuments remain, though they are slowly being reclaimed by the desert sands. The royal tombs, once the epitome of eternal life, now serve as reminders of the fragility of immortality, as time and nature inevitably erode what man once built. Your tomb is meant to ensure your immortality, but time itself is the greatest destroyer of all. Even the gods themselves cannot escape the decay of the ages. The ancient texts may declare you the divine ruler of Egypt, but as the years stretch into centuries, that same history can be rewritten, and the stories of your reign can be distorted. Civilizations rise and fall, and while your monuments may stand for a time, they will eventually be overcome by new rulers, new beliefs, and new eras. The pharaohs built Egypt's glory, but time will eventually tear it down piece by piece. Historians argue whether the pharaohs were fully aware of this transience. Some suggest that they lived in a state of denial, believing that their reigns would last for eternity, while others argue that the pharaohs, fully aware of the limitations of their own lives, used their monuments and tombs as a way of asserting control over their legacy. The reality is that, while the divinity of the pharaoh may have been eternal, the kingdom they ruled over was always in flux, and so was the story of their reign. The pharaohs were divine, but even divinity cannot shield a kingdom from the passage of time. The ultimate irony of the pharaoh's life is that, for all their attempts to secure immortality, they are ultimately forgotten by history. The monuments they leave behind are often misinterpreted or lost entirely. Ancient Egypt, with all its power and majesty, is a memory, one that the world will continue to study, interpret, and reinterpret as time marches on. Even as you sit in your tomb, the sands of time are already beginning to erase your name, and yet your legacy remains, preserved in the monuments of Egypt. The monuments you built not just for yourself, but for a civilization that will outlast. You historians still debate the true impact of the pharaohs. Were they the divine rulers they claimed to be? Or were they simply men, like all others, who ruled with force and ambition, whose names became symbols of a long-dead empire? The pharaohs may have believed in their divine right, but their legacy, just like their lives, was shaped by those who came after them. The true immortality of a pharaoh, it seems, lies not in the monuments they leave behind, but in the stories told about them in the centuries that follow. The grand monuments of the pharaohs, despite their apparent permanence, ultimately serve as markers of impermanence. They are memorials of what once was, reminders of a time long past. As pharaoh, you lived within a system that demanded you build and conquer, leaving behind legacies that would outlive your mortal body. But as we've seen, nothing is truly immortal, not even the divinity that was bestowed upon you by the gods. Your tomb may endure, your name etched into the annals of history, but the sands of time, the winds of change, and the ever-turning wheel of Egypt's dynastic cycles will eventually wear away even the most enduring symbols of your reign. And so, as the final stone is placed upon your tomb, as the offerings are made, and the priests chant their last prayers for your souls, safe passage, you, the God King of Egypt, become a part of a much larger cycle. You may rest in eternal glory, but your death is merely a part of the endless march of history that will continue long after your name has faded from the memories of the living. Your successors, inheriting the mantle of Pharaoh, will live with the same divine expectations, the same pressures, and the same inevitable decline that you once faced. They too will build monuments, accumulate riches, and perform rituals, but they will never escape the reality that all things must end. Historians, scholars, and archaeologists will continue to study the remnants of your reign for centuries to come. The pyramids, the temples, the mummies all will serve as reminders not just of the power of the pharaohs, but of the fragility of that power. Egypt, as a civilization, will live on in the memories of the world, its glory enshrined in stone, its people immortalized in the art and texts of later ages. But the pharaohs themselves, no matter how divine, are mortal. Your tomb, the ultimate symbol of your reign, is not just a resting place, but a marker of your passage through the world of passage that, no matter how grand, will eventually be. Lost to the ages, the great pharaohs may have been god kings, but in the end, they were men who fought for power, died for it, and were buried with it. Their bodies preserved for eternity stand as silent witnesses to the paradox of their existence, that the more power you wield, the more you seek to immortalize yourself, the more you must confront the reality that your time on this earth is finite. Your tomb may stand as a symbol of your legacy, but even the mightiest of tombs cannot protect you from the one thing that is certain: death. And death, like the shifting sands of the desert, will one day bury even the mightiest pharaoh beneath its weight. As the centuries pass, Egypt will continue to evolve. New pharaohs will rise, new dynasties will rule, and Egypt will change. The gods you worshipped will be replaced with new gods. New ideologies will emerge, and your once glorious kingdom will eventually crumble into ruins. The power of Egypt may remain in the history books, but the power of the pharaoh, the god kings, will fade into myth. The life of a pharaoh is suspended between divinity and mortality, and when the last pharaoh is forgotten, the lands of Egypt will continue, ever changing, while the story of your reign is whispered by the winds across the vast desert. But for now, as you rest in your tomb, remember this: you were more than just a ruler. You were a symbol of Egypt's glory, embodiment of the gods on earth. Your reign was a period of magnificent achievements, but also of struggles, betrayals, and the constant battle for survival. And though your reign may have ended, your story is not yet finished. The legacy of the pharaohs, like the sands of the desert, will never truly be erased. Now, as you lay within your tomb, surrounded by treasures and the offerings of your people, remember that while the pharaoh's reign may end, Egypt's story is eternal. In this, there lies the truth. The pharaohs were always more than mortal, even as their bodies decay and their monuments crumble. They remain forever part of the fabric of Egypt's divine past, waiting to be uncovered and reinterpreted by those who seek to understand the mystery of the gods and the kings who walked among them.